Hey guys, happy Monday. I wanted to start off with a thank you for all of you who answered the survey and gave me some feedback. Some of you had some really nice things to say, so I appreciate that. And some of you had some great suggestions, and I wanted to start the week by talking about some of those so you know what might be coming up. One change that a lot of people requested, turn-in times. I've been having you guys hand stuff in by 3 o'clock. That's been the due date on my assignments. A lot of you said that made you feel kind of rushed. And so I have moved the turn-in times back to 11:59 p.m., which sounds like that's what most of your teachers are doing. So that will be the expectation moving forward, that whatever the work is for that day, it's just completed by the end of that day, 11:59 p.m., and we'll call it good. I'll just hope it's there for me to grade the next morning. Some other stuff that was suggested. Thomas suggested that perhaps in the modules, I can move the week that we're in to the top so you don't have to scroll down through all the past modules to find what we're doing this week. Great suggestion, Thomas. That is how my modules are organized now. So the module for this week, week 3 of quarter 4, is on the top. You don't have to scroll to find it. A couple people suggested maybe like some more resources, like PowerPoints and stuff like that. Shelby suggested that maybe I should try out Loom. I actually have done that in my human geography course, but Shelby, I got a Loom coming for you next week and a PowerPoint presentation to go with it, so you can look forward to that. Jaden mentioned maybe doing some conferences just to say hello. I'll try to get some more like Flipgrids in there so we can say hi to each other. But hey, if you ever want to do a video conference and you've got a question or something like that, or you just want to say hi and see what's going on, send me an email. We'll set that up. I would love to do some video conferences with you guys. And a couple people mentioned, what else do we got here? A calendar that maybe allows us to preview the week. And so I'm going to try to do that right now. Preview the week a little bit and let you know some things that you can expect for this week in U.S. history. So the title for this week is Other Civil Rights Movements. And the reason that that's the title for week 3 of quarter 4 of U.S. history is because up until this point, we've largely focused on the African American fight for civil rights. And that's a super important part and a huge part of the civil rights movement that deserves our specific attention, especially considering the racial history of this country that led us to that point. But the civil rights movement, the larger civil rights movement, incorporated a lot of different groups, historically marginalized groups that were fighting for civil rights during that time. And so what we're going to do this week is we're going to look at some of those groups. And each day we're going to turn our attention to a different group. So one day we might look at women, another day we might look at LGBTQ plus people, Asian Americans, Latino Americans, the environmental movement. These are all groups that were fighting for their civil rights during that time and make up the larger civil rights movement. And what your goal is going to be at some time this week, due by the end of the week, your summative assessment, your test for this week, is that you're going to pick one of those movements and you're going to give a speech. The expectations to the speech are already available to you in the module for this week, but I can describe some of those general expectations here. So generally speaking, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be selecting one of those other civil rights movements. You are going to be portraying yourself as an ally to one of those movements during that time. And you are going to give a speech in which you advocate for the very things that that movement advocated for. Now, the options are available to you in the module. One of the options you cannot pick is the civil rights for African Americans. A, because we've already spent 2 weeks studying it and you've already kind of showed me what you've learned about that movement. And B, because that is the movement that I selected to give you an example of what your speech can look like. So here that is.
Thank you to everyone for coming out today. It's a beautiful day here in Robbinsdale, Minnesota. hace sol y los pájaros están cantando. Unfortunately, some of the things that have brought us together here today aren't so beautiful. With the abolition of slavery, the black man in America was supposed to have achieved equality with the white man. But across the country, and especially in the Jim Crow South, we have seen that this hasn't been the case. Blacks and whites have been separated through state-sponsored segregation, a doctrine that claims to be separate but equal, but has left black people with inferior neighborhoods, with inferior schools, and inferior seats in the back of the bus. Hay supresión del derecho al voto a través de cosas discriminatorias como exámenes de lectoescritura, impuestos al sufragio, y grandfather clauses. And all too often, black people have been victims of violence at the hands of white racists. And we're here today because we want to change that. Tenemos un caso en la Corte Suprema, Brown v. Board of Education, que tal vez abolirá la segregación racial en las escuelas. We're pushing for a Voting Rights Act in the U.S. Congress that we hope will bring an end to discriminatory voting practices. And we won't stop until we achieve these goals. We will continue to boycott the buses of Montgomery. We will continue to sit in at segregated lunch counters in places like Nashville and Greensboro. Si tenemos que hacerlo, marcharemos al capital en Washington, D.C. para nos mostrar nuestra dedicación. And we will do it all non-violently. Because as the great Martin Luther King once said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. El odio no puede expulsar el odio. Solo el amor puede hacerlo. So gracias for coming out today. I hope you will continue to come out until we truly live in a country en que personas no están juzgados por el color de su piel, but the content of their character.
And that's what your speech should look like. I've linked the transcript to that speech I just gave in the module as well, so you can kind of go back and reference that and notice how I hit all the expectations laid out in the assignment. I had an introduction. I described the problem. I described specific achievements that we're going to achieve. In reality, those are things that have already been achieved, but I framed them as things that we're going to achieve in the future. I referenced real events, real protests that took place, like the sit-ins and the March on Washington. And then I had a quote from Martin Luther King. I actually had two quotes from him and a brief conclusion. So I hit all the parts, so you can take a look at how I did that and use that as kind of a template as you look to write your own speech for one of the other civil rights movements that we're going to be looking at this week. The speech is the summative assessment. That is the test that is due at the end of the week. What you're going to be doing today is watching an episode of Crash Course. Not the full episode. You can watch the full episode if you want to, but I've just got a specific about 5-minute piece of this episode that I want you to watch that will very quickly summarize the civil rights struggles of a lot of the groups that we're going to be looking at this week. And that's what your homework is today. Your homework is to watch the assigned portion of that Crash Course video and describe in a sentence or two what the civil rights struggle for each of those groups looked like. And one way you can think about it is like this, folks. Every civil rights struggle is informed by the experiences of the group of people who participated in that civil rights struggle. So, for example, there's a reason that African Americans are sitting at lunch counters. because segregated lunch counters were part of their experience. There's a reason that African Americans were looking to get a Voting Rights Act passed through Congress, because their right to vote was something that had been denied to them. It reflected their experience, their struggle, the specific discrimination that they faced. And so we can imagine with all these other groups, their struggles are going to reflect their experiences and their specific challenges and problems that they encounter because of who they are as a group. And so in that sense, each civil rights movement, there's some similarities, but they also look different, because the civil rights movements of each group reflect the experience of that group. So that's kind of what you can have in your head as you get started and watch that crash course episode today, and kind of get an overview of some of the groups that we're going to be studying this week and some of the options that you have in constructing your speech. So start thinking about those speeches. If you have decided on a group and you'd like more resources, feel free to reach out to me, and feel free to conduct your own investigations. Don't just wait for it to come up this week. I am here all week to answer your questions. But that's what you're doing this week, guys. You're studying other civil rights movement, you're making a speech, you're making a video, you're gonna upload that video to Canvas. I would love if people share their videos, or allow me to share their videos. Like if you put your video on YouTube, I would love to create a page where we can see each other's speeches. I think that'd be really cool. But if you're a little embarrassed and don't really want to share your speech, I understand that too, so I'll leave that up to you. But I think the more speeches we can share with each other, the more fun we can make this thing. So that's the week. I'll be back tomorrow with some more daily work for you. Until then, adios.
There's nobody actually out here.